The emergency klaxons screamed across the Veltharan Dominion's most fortified station as Admiral Kixthara watched the impossible unfold on her tactical display. A single vessel, sleek, obsidian, and radiating an energy signature that made her combat sensors weep, had just translated out of hyperspace at the edge of their system. "Status report," she barked, her four arms dancing across the command console with practiced efficiency. "Unknown vessel, Admiral. Configuration. It's not in any database. The hull appears to be some form of metamaterial we've never encountered. Energy output is—" Lieutenant Vexmore paused, his scaled features pale. "It's off the charts, ma'am. That ship is generating more power than our entire battle fleet." Kixthara's throat sacs pulsed with agitation. The Veltharan Dominion had ruled this sector for 3 millennia, their bioships and plasma weaponry unmatched by any known civilization. They had crushed the mechanical armies of the Kronari Empire, dissolved the energy-based Luxari Collective, and absorbed dozens of lesser species into their expanding domain. But this was different. "Hail the vessel," she commanded. The main viewer flickered to life, revealing a face that sent ice through Kixthara's veins. The being was bipedal, pale-skinned, with Predator's eyes set in a forward-facing skull. Its hair was dark, streaked with premature silver, and when it smiled, Kixthara glimpsed teeth designed for tearing flesh. "Greetings," the creature said, its voice carrying an accent that seemed to dance between languages. "I am Captain Kyrian Vale of the Terran ship Nemesis. You may have heard of my people by another name, though I suspect our reputation has grown somewhat exaggerated over the centuries." Kixthara's blood ran cold. Terrans, humans, the ghost stories that parent caste told their spawn to ensure obedience. The mythical Deathworlders who had supposedly vanished into the galactic rim 800 years ago after their homeworld died in stellar fire. "Impossible," she whispered. "Your species is extinct." Captain Vale's smile widened, revealing more of those carnivorous teeth. "Extinction is a luxury we never quite mastered, Admiral. Though I understand why you might think so. We've been busy, building, preparing, waiting for the galaxy to forget just how dangerous a cornered animal can become." Behind him, Kixthara caught glimpses of his bridge, impossible geometries of black metal and pulsing energy, crew members moving with the fluid grace of apex predators. The technology visible was like nothing she had ever seen. Organic curves, melded with mechanical precision in ways that hurt to contemplate. "You will surrender this system immediately," she declared, falling back on protocol even as her tactical system screamed warnings about the growing energy buildup from the human vessel. "The Veltharan Dominion claims this space by right of conquest." "Conquest," Vale mused, leaning back in his chair. "An interesting word choice. Tell me, Admiral, do you know what we humans learned during our 8 centuries in exile? We learned that the galaxy has a very short memory. It forgets. The lessons written in blood and bone. It forgets why entire civilizations once trembled at the mention of Earth. The ship's sensors detected massive energy spikes throughout the human vessel. Whatever they had built in their long absence, it made Dominion technology look primitive, by comparison. But don't worry," Vale continued, his eyes gleaming with predatory anticipation. "We're here to provide a refresher course. Class is now in session." The transmission ended, leaving Kixthara staring at a blank screen while the black ship hung in space like a sword poised above her fleet's throat. 3 hours after the human vessel's arrival, every long-range sensor in the Corvanis sector began screaming in unison. Admiral Kixthara watched in growing horror as her tactical display populated with new contacts, dozens of them, translating out of hyperspace with mechanical precision around key strategic points throughout Dominion space. "Fleet composition. Analysis," she ordered, though her voice carried less authority than it had mere hours ago. "Ma'am, we're detecting— it's impossible. 47 vessels, each matching the energy signature of the initial contact. They're positioning themselves at choke points throughout our territory. Navigation beacons, trade routes, communication relays, they know our infrastructure better than we do. Lieutenant Commander Zeftara, her tactical officer, manipulated the holographic display with trembling tentacles. Admiral, there's something else. We're intercepting communications from our outlying colonies. The humans, they're not attacking. Explain. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. Universal translators are picking up the transmissions, but the content... Zeftara's exoskeleton rattled with nervous energy. They're telling stories. Ma'am, stories about humanity. Kixathara felt her throat sacs deflate. Put it through! The bridge speakers crackled to life, carrying a voice like aged whiskey and sharpened steel. Not Captain Vale, someone else entirely. And so the archives record the Battle of Zarian Prime, where 3 human dreadnoughts held the line against an entire Kitharan armada. The Kitharans, you see, made the mistake of targeting human civilian transports. What they didn't understand was that humans don't just fight for territory or resources. They fight for each other, every single time. The voice paused, and Kixathara could almost hear the galaxy listening. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, Zarian Prime still flew human colors, and the Kitharan Fourth Fleet existed only as expanding debris clouds. The survivors spoke of human ships that refused to die, of crews that kept fighting with hull breaches venting atmosphere, of captains who rammed their burning vessels into enemy dreadnoughts rather than surrender. On her personal display, Kixathara pulled up historical records, cross-referencing the name. The battle had occurred over 4 centuries ago, shortly before humanity's supposed extinction. According to Dominion archives, it had been a minor skirmish between 2 primitive species. The human records painted a very different picture. The hegemony of Scaros learned a similar lesson 300 years ago, the voice continued. They thought they could break human resolve by devastating colony worlds. What they achieved instead was teaching humanity that sometimes the only acceptable response to annihilation is to become annihilation. Kixathara's 4 arms worked frantically at her console, pulling up more records. The Scaros incident. She remembered it now. An entire star system that had simply stopped. No more communications, no more trade, no more anything. Exploration. Fleets had found the system's star artificially aged, its planets cracked and lifeless. The official report blamed a stellar engineering accident. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of indeterminate gender classification, the voice concluded with what sounded suspiciously like amusement. We are not here for conquest. We are not here for resources. We are here because 8 centuries ago, you decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist alongside civilized species. The transmission shifted, and suddenly, every screen in Kixathara's command center displayed the same image. A blue-green world wreathed in fire, its surface scarred by antimatter bombardment, its oceans boiling away into space. This was Earth, the voice said softly. Our home. You burned it because you feared what we might become. Well, congratulations. We became something far worse than your nightmares ever dared imagine. The image faded, replaced by Captain Vale's face. Admiral Kixathara of the Veltharan Dominion, he said, those predator's eyes boring into hers through the screen. You have 24 hours to evacuate all military vessels from this system. After that, we begin demonstrating what 8 centuries of enforced evolution has taught us about survival. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in absolute silence, save for the rhythmic pulsing of Dominion biosystems and the accelerated breathing of her crew. 18 hours into the human ultimatum, Admiral Kixathara received a priority transmission from High Command. The Dominion Council, in their infinite wisdom, had decided that a single human vessel, regardless of its apparent technological superiority, could not possibly threaten the might of their biofleets. They were sending reinforcements. The 7th, 9th, and 11th battle groups were converging on her position, their living ships hungry for combat after months of routine patrol duty. HFY had tried to explain what she was seeing on her sensors, the impossible energy, readings, the casual way the human vessel had positioned itself at the perfect tactical nexus of her defensive formations. But High Command had dismissed her concerns as battle fatigue. Now, watching Battle Group 7 translate into normal space, she wondered if she was about to witness a massacre and which side would be doing the slaughtering. "Contact Admiral Vorthak," she ordered. "Tell him to maintain formation distance. Do not engage until we understand what we're dealing with." The Nemesis hung motionless against the star field, its black hull seeming to drink in light itself. No weapons were visible, no obvious points of vulnerability. It simply existed, like a hole punched through reality itself. "Ma'am," her communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel, audio only." "Put it through." Captain Vale's voice filled the bridge, carrying a note of what might have been disappointment. "Admiral, I specifically requested that you evacuate military vessels from this system. Instead, you've brought friends. I'm afraid this necessitates a change in lesson plans." "Human!" Admiral Vorthak's voice crackled over the battlenet. "You face the combined might of 4 Dominion battle groups. Surrender now, and your death will be swift." Vale chuckled, the sound like ice cracking under pressure. "Admiral Vorthak of the Devourer's Pride, your service record makes for interesting reading. 17 worlds conquered, 4 species entirely consumed by your bioships. Your crews have quite the appetite for sentient flesh, don't they?" The channel went silent for several heartbeats. "How did you—" "We've been watching, Admiral. Cataloging. Learning. Did you think we spent 8 centuries sitting idle in the galactic rim? We've observed every atrocity, recorded every crime, documented every act of casual genocide your civilized galaxy has committed in our absence." On her tactical display, HFY watched energy readings from the human ship begin to climb exponentially. Not gradually, but in sharp measured increases that suggested incredible control over whatever forces they were harnessing. "The question," Vale continued, "is what to do with that information. The Veltharan Dominion alone has murdered over 3 billion sentient beings in the past century. Your bioships don't just kill, they metabolize their victims, turning sapient beings into fuel for your expansion." The human vessel began to change. Its hull rippled like liquid, sections folding outward to reveal internal structures that defied conventional understanding of physics. The ship was transforming, revealing itself to be something far more complex than even their advanced sensors had suggested. "So here's what's going to happen," Vale said, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any roar. "Admiral Vorthak, you're going to learn why human military doctrine includes a concept your species never developed: proportional response." The Nemesis fired a single shot. It wasn't a beam or a projectile or any form of energy weapon that Dominion sensors could identify. It was something that simply made one of Vorthak's heavy cruisers stop existing. Not destroyed, not vaporized, simply absent, as if it had never been there at all. "The next shot removes your flagship," Vale informed them pleasantly. "The shot after that removes you. The shot after that removes your homeworld. We can continue this demonstration until either you develop wisdom or we run out of targets." Admiral Vorthak, to his credit, managed to keep his voice steady. "What do you want?" "To remind the galaxy why they once feared us," Vale replied. Class dismissed. Within 72 hours of the Corvanis sector incident, every major power in the galaxy had received copies of humanity's historical archives. The data packages arrived through methods that bypassed every security protocol, materialized in sealed chambers, and proved utterly impossible to delete or quarantine. On the Chronari homeworld of Pharaoh's Ka, Emperor Nethric stood before the Supreme. War Council, his mechanical augmentations sparking with rage as he reviewed the documents his intelligence operatives had tried desperately to suppress. Lies, he declared, his voice booming through speakers embedded in his cybernetic throat. Human propaganda designed to— "Your Excellence," interrupted General Cavthox, his own modifications glowing amber with stress indicators. "The archives include dimensional coordinates, verifiable stellar cartography, battle debris that our archaeological teams have confirmed. These aren't fabrications." The holographic display showed the Battle of the Iron Nebula, where a single human exploration vessel had held off an entire Chronari sector fleet for 8 days. The official Chronari records listed it as a minor engagement against primitive organics. The human records detailed how the crew of the Indomitable had jerry-rigged their ship's medical bay into a weapons factory, using surgical nanites to construct armor-piercing ammunition from their own recycled hull plating. They turned their medical supplies into bullets, General Cavthox said quietly. When they ran out of conventional ammunition, they fired their own bone fragments accelerated to near-light speed. The crew literally gave pieces of themselves to keep fighting. Emperor Nethric's optical sensors dimmed as he processed the tactical implications. "If these records are accurate, how did we defeat them?" "We didn't, Excellence. We never fought them. Not really. Every engagement on record shows humans either achieving victory or fighting to mutual annihilation. There are no records of human surrender. On the luxurious resort world of Velthar Prime, the Meridian Collective's governing minds interfaced directly with the human data streams, their crystalline matrices struggling to process the information. The Collective had always prided itself on logical analysis, pure computational reasoning free from organic limitations. The human archives broke their understanding of logical warfare. Query: how does a species achieve tactical advantage through deliberately sacrificing strategic assets? Asked Prime Logic Zareth, her crystal form pulsing with confusion. Analysis: humans appear to operate under non-standard cost-benefit calculations, replied Sublogic Mordain. They frequently accepted total material loss to achieve marginal emotional satisfaction. Clarification: emotional satisfaction, revenge, honor, protection of non-combatants. The humans regularly chose combat outcomes that provided zero strategic benefit and maximum casualty rates simply to punish enemies who had violated their ethical frameworks. The Collective's shared consciousness recoiled from the concept. They had built their civilization on the principle that all actions should provide measurable benefit. The idea of fighting simply to make enemies pay for their actions, regardless of cost, was alien to their nature, but it was undeniably effective. Meanwhile, in the deepest vaults of the Astral Concordium, Lorekeeper Jin Aris reviewed the most disturbing entries in the human archives. Not the battles or the technology, but the cultural documentation that revealed humanity's true nature. "They call it spite," she whispered to her assembled scholars. "The willingness to harm oneself in order to harm one's enemies more severely. They have dozens of words for variations of this concept: revenge, retribution, vengeance, payback. Their entire language is structured around reciprocal violence." One of her junior researchers, a young ethereal named Lixandra, raised a tentative observation. "Lorekeeper, if these records are accurate, why did humanity allow their homeworld to be destroyed? Surely they possess the technology to prevent it." Jinaris manipulated the display, showing star charts from the final days of Earth. "Because, child, they realize something that still hasn't occurred to us. Sometimes the only way to win is to make victory so costly that your enemies destroy, themselves achieving it." The final entry in the human archives was a simple message, dated to the day after Earth's destruction. "They wanted us gone, because they feared what we might become. Now they'll learn what we became because they wanted us gone. The universe abhors a vacuum, but it absolutely despises a species with nothing left to lose." Admiral Lysander Vex, Last Fleet Command. Across the galaxy, the message was the same. Humanity hadn't been defeated. They had been transformed into something far more dangerous than their enemies had ever imagined. The emergency session of the Galactic Concordat convened on the neutral station of Harmony's Gate, a massive construct built from the willing cooperation of 17 species. For the first time in galactic history, every major power had agreed to attend a single meeting. They came not as negotiators, but as survivors seeking to understand the nature of their new reality. High Consul Meredith of the Astral Concordium materialized her ethereal form at the chamber's center, her translucent features etched with concern. Around the vast amphitheater, representatives of dozens of civilizations watched through a mixture of technological interfaces, bio-neural links, and simple optical sensors. "Fellow sapients," she began, her voice carrying through quantum resonance. "Fields to accommodate the various communication methods. We face an unprecedented situation. The humans have returned, and they are not the species we remember." A ripple of unease passed through the assembly. Everyone had received the archives, seen the tactical analyses, understood the implications. "The question before us," Meredith continued, "is whether we can coexist with a species that has spent 8 centuries evolving specifically to destroy civilizations like ours." Emperor Nethric's mechanical form clanked as he stood. "Consul, with respect, the question is whether they will allow us to exist at all. My intelligence services report 47 human vessels have taken positions throughout the galaxy. Each. One could potentially eliminate an entire fleet. We are no longer discussing diplomacy. We are discussing survival." "The Chronari fear too quickly," interjected Hive Queen Vesara of the Swarm Collective, her 1,000-strong voice creating harmonics that most species found deeply unsettling. "Humans are few. We are many. Numbers will tell." "Will they?" The new voice belonged to no recognized delegate. It came from the chamber's speakers, but security sweeps revealed no unauthorized transmission sources. Every being in the assembly recognized it immediately. "Captain Kyrian Vale. Please don't let me interrupt," the human continued with audible amusement. "Continue discussing us as if we can't hear every word. It's quite educational." High Consul Meredith's form flickered with distress. "How are you accessing this channel? Our security protocols were designed by species that think in 3 dimensions," Vale interrupted smoothly. "We've had 8 centuries to learn better. But please," Hive Queen Vesara was making an interesting point about numbers. "Would you care to elaborate?" The Swarm Queen's bioacoustic systems thrummed with aggression. "Humans number in millions, swarm births billions annually. Simple mathematics." "Simple mathematics," Vale agreed. "Let me share some of my own. Human Tactical Doctrine, Revision 847, subsection on asymmetric warfare. When facing a numerically superior enemy, the optimal solution is to make numbers irrelevant. Would you like a demonstration?" Every screen in the chamber displayed the same image. A star system on the galaxy's rim, teeming with the distinctive bioships of a swarm secondary hive. Billions of vessels swarmed through space in complex patterns, their combined mass exceeding that of several planets. "This is the Keftar system," Vale explained conversationally. "Swarm colony established approximately 2 centuries ago. Current population, roughly 43 billion individuals across all castes. A single black dot appeared at the system's edge. 1 human vessel. The Anathema, commanded by Captain Rexia Noth. She's what we call a specialist." The dot moved through the system with impossible speed, leaving behind it a trail of something that wasn't quite energy and wasn't quite matter. Where it passed, swarm vessels simply stopped. Not destroyed, not damaged. They simply ceased all activity. "Neural cascade weapon," Vale explained, as the Watchers observed billions of bioships going dormant in perfect synchronization. Captain Noth's particular expertise, non-lethal but highly effective against hive mind species. Your entire secondary colony is now in artificial hibernation. They'll wake up in about 6 months with splitting headaches and a profound aversion to violent thoughts. The image faded, leaving the assembly in stunned silence. Numbers, Vale continued, are only relevant if you can keep your forces conscious long enough to use them. Now, shall we discuss terms, or would you prefer more demonstrations? High Consul Meredith found her voice first. What do you want? Justice, Vale replied simply. 8 centuries ago, you decided humanity was too dangerous to exist alongside civilized species. You were right, we are dangerous, but we were never uncivilized. The negotiations took place aboard the human vessel Arbitration, a ship that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously and somehow managed to provide comfortable accommodations for every known form of sentient life. The very existence of such a vessel demonstrated technological capabilities that rendered previous assumptions about human limitations utterly obsolete. Ambassador Chinthara of the Meridian Collective interfaced her crystalline matrix with the ship's data systems and immediately recoiled in shock. The Arbitration wasn't just a ship, it was an entire civilization compressed into a single hull, containing research facilities, manufacturing centers, agricultural systems, and living spaces for millions of beings. How? She asked Captain Vale, who sat across from her at a conference table that was simultaneously made of wood, crystal, metal, and substances that defied classification. Necessity, he replied simply. When you destroy someone's home, they learn to carry everything they value with them. We've become very efficient at maximization of resources. The human delegation consisted of only 3 individuals, but Chinthara's sensors detected thousands of others throughout the ship. Not just humans, but representatives of species she didn't recognize, beings that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions, entities that registered as pure thought-given form. Who are they? She asked. Refugees, said the second human, who had introduced herself as Admiral Keth Anya Voss. Her skin bore faint scarification that seemed to shift and flow like living circuits. Species your civilized galaxy drove to extinction. We found their remnants, their survivors, their digitized consciousnesses. We gave them new forms, new purposes, new lives. Impossible. The records show what you wanted them to show, interrupted the third human, Commander Haverick Stone. His eyes were completely black, not with color, but with the absence of light itself. Did you think we spent 8 centuries alone in the void? We gathered the lost, the forgotten, the supposedly extinct. Every species your galactic community discarded became part of ours. The conference chamber's atmosphere shifted, and suddenly, Chinthara found herself looking at beings she recognized from historical archives. A Velnakari scout, its crystalline carapace refracting impossible colors. A Morthek diplomat, its gaseous form held together by fields that shouldn't exist. A Krevaxian engineer, her 6 arms working on devices that rewrote local physics. The Velnakari disappeared 400 years ago, Chinthara whispered. Genocide, corrected Captain Vale. The Dominion consumed their homeworld. We found the survivors in deep space mining operations, enslaved and slowly being metabolized for protein synthesis. Liberating them was educational. The Morthek ascended to pure energy centuries ago. The Morthek were forcibly converted to energy by Concordium experiments, Admiral Voss said coldly. Your people thought consciousness without physical form would be easier to study. We taught them how to inhabit matter again. And the Krevaxians achieved technological singularity, were kidnapped by the collective and had their neural patterns harvested for computational systems, Commander Stone finished. Every ascension and evolution your species recorded was actually systematic extermination. We've been putting the victims back together. The implications hit Chinthara like a physical blow. If the humans had been systematically rescuing extinct species, if they had been building a coalition of the galaxy's forgotten victims— "How many?" she asked weakly. 237 species that your civilized galaxy destroyed or enslaved, Vale replied. Each one eager to discuss their experiences with their former oppressors. Each one now capable of technologies that make your current capabilities look primitive. "What do you want?" Chinthara asked again, though she suspected she already knew. "Reparations," Admiral Voss said simply. "Every species you destroyed had colonies, had trade networks, had territorial claims. We want them back. That would mean abandoning 2/3 of settled space. Then you should have thought of that before committing genocide on an industrial scale," Commander Stone interrupted. "We're offering you the same choice you gave us 8 centuries ago. Leave or be made to leave." Captain Vale leaned forward, his predator's eyes fixing on hers. "The difference is, we're giving you a choice at all. Your people didn't extend us that courtesy." The conference chamber's walls became transparent, revealing the vastness of space beyond. But it wasn't empty space. It was filled with ships, thousands of them, representing designs and technologies from hundreds of species, all flying human. "Command codes. This is the second fleet," Vale explained conversationally. 3,700 vessels representing 237 species. The first fleet is currently visiting your homeworlds. The third fleet is securing strategic resources. We have 17 fleets total. Chinthara's matrix pulsed with terror. "How?" "We learned," Vale said simply. "You taught us that the galaxy only respects strength, so we became stronger than anything you could imagine. 6 months after the human ultimatum, the galaxy had been transformed beyond recognition. The great powers that had ruled for millennia found themselves relegated to reservation worlds, their military fleets decommissioned, their colonial empires dissolved and returned to their original inhabitants. But it wasn't conquest in any form. The galaxy understood." On the world of Nouvelle Nakar, former Ambassador Chinthara of the Meridian Collective stood in a crystal garden that sang with harmonics thought lost forever. Around her, Velnakari younglings played games that involved manipulating light itself, their laughter creating visible aurora in the air. "It's beautiful," she said to her guide, a being she still struggled to comprehend. Rexani had once been human. Now she existed as something between flesh and energy, her form shifting between states as needed. She had volunteered to serve as a liaison between the old galaxy and the new order humanity was establishing. "The Velnakari were artists," Rexani explained, her voice carrying harmonics that normal human vocal cords couldn't produce. "Before the Dominion consumed their worlds, they created symphonies of light that could be seen from neighboring star systems. We're helping them rebuild that capability." "And the Dominion?" "Learning to farm," Rexani replied with something that might have been humor. "Actual farming, not biometabolizing sentient beings. It's proving educational for them." They walked through the crystal gardens toward the memorial at the heart of the settlement. It was a simple structure, built from materials that represented every extinct species humanity had rescued. Names were inscribed in scripts from across the galaxy, representing the 47 billion individuals who had died in the Great Power's expansion. "Do you hate us?" Chinthara asked quietly. Rexani paused, considering. "Hate is inefficient. We spent 8 centuries learning to channel our emotions into productivity. Hate requires energy that could be better used for construction rather than destruction." "But you remember." "We remember everything," Rexani confirmed. "Every atrocity, every injustice, every casual genocide. But we also remember that most of your people were simply following orders, believing propaganda, accepting the reality they were given." They reached the memorial's center, where a simple plaque bore an inscription in human script. "To the 47. billion who died for the crime of being different, and to the generations who will live because we remembered why difference should be celebrated, not eliminated. The galaxy fears us now, Rexani said, placing her hand on the memorial's surface. They're right to. We've become something they can't understand or control. But fear was never the point. What was? Justice. Not revenge, justice. Making sure that what happened to us, what happened to all the lost as species, never happens again. Above them, the sky filled with ships, human vessels, Velnakari light sculptures, Morthek energy patterns, Krivaxian reality manipulators, and dozens of other designs representing species thought extinct. They moved in perfect harmony, a testament to what could be achieved when difference was valued rather than feared. The stars remember now, Rexani said softly. They remember why they once feared humanity, not because we were violent, but because we were incorruptible. We couldn't be bribed, couldn't be bargained with, couldn't be convinced to abandon our principles. And now? Now they remember why that fear was justified. We've become what the galaxy needed us to become, the sword that hangs over the throat of tyranny, the shield that protects the innocent, the voice that speaks for the voiceless. In the distance, a Dominion agricultural collective worked the fields under the watchful eyes of liberated Velnakari artists who painted light murals in the sky above them. Former soldiers of the Kronari Empire learned to build instead of destroy, their mechanical augmentations repurposed for construction rather than warfare. Swarm collectives discovered individual creativity for the first time in their species' history. Change is possible, Rexani said, answering Chinthara's unspoken question. Redemption is possible, but justice comes first, always. The black ships continued their patrol routes through the galaxy, no longer harbingers of destruction, but guardians of a new order. They carried crews of every species that had ever been written off as extinct, commanded by humans who had learned that sometimes the greatest strength came not from being feared, but from being worthy of the fear. The stars remembered, and in their memory, the galaxy found a peace it had never known, the peace that came from knowing that the innocent would be protected, the guilty would be held accountable, and the lost would never be forgotten. Humanity had returned not as conquerors, but as shepherds of justice itself. And in that role, they had finally found their home among the stars.